just wanted to welcome you, tell you hi. I'm going to be sharing this so that people know a little bit more about you and about what's happening in the industry right now. So if you want to start out by telling us a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, that kind of thing, and then we'll launch into questions.
Pretty boring, but I'll go ahead.
No.
So yeah, I'm Aaron Bludworth. I'm CEO of Fern. We're a top 3 trade show live event service provider based in Cincinnati. My career goes back 29 years this month. I started working shows in Salt Lake City. Was there for a long time, then a brief stint at GES at their national headquarters in Las Vegas, and then have been here leading Fern since 2008. So 13 years this summer.
Wow. So what made you start in this business? What got you into this business?
Well, like most, accidentally. I didn't know anything about the business. I was working, I was pretty young. I had an uncle who worked in the space, and he offered me a job, offered me an opportunity, and I had never even really heard of trade shows or live events. I don't think I'd ever stepped foot into a convention center prior to my first day. I was young. There was no strategy to it. I just tripped into it.
Wow. Did you like it immediately, or was it something that just grew on you?
Yeah, no. So I mentioned 29 years ago, this month, in fact, is when I started in the industry, and I walked onto my first show, and it was the National Guard Association of the United States convention. And there was a visit from the current president, a presidential candidate working with the Secret Service, thousands of people excited to be there. It was a whole lot different than the printing business that I've been working in. And I will say that I recognized the magic and excitement of that business, right away. I think within the first few days, I thought it was pretty cool. I didn't know that it would be a career at that point. I was heading towards law school, and eventually dropped that and stayed in the space, focused on business. And so, yeah, I think I recognized it early on, probably not the full power of it, but I was pretty hooked from the first experience of working with a very large event with a lot of excitement. Like I said, when you have the presidential candidate, you're working with Secret Service on day one, and you're used to, working in a small printing operation that's very repetitive and very boring. It's pretty cool.
That changes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think for me as well, that's kind of what's interesting, is being every single day is a different day. Every single experience at every show is different. I mean, you could do the same show, which I've done over and over for 38 years, and it's different every time. I never know what to expect.
Yeah,
I'd like it to be a little more
I probably have a little bit of undiagnosed ADD, and this is a much better business for that than something monotonous and 9 to 5. And I get the chance to interact with thousands of people a year, sometimes speak with groups of thousands of people. I travel a lot, and I just have the opportunity to engage with, a lot of people, a lot of things, a lot of stimulus, which is great for me.
That's good. Yeah. I think I feel that similarity in that. So when you are working and obviously growing the business, and I know that you've grown Fern quite a bit in the time that you've been there, how do you stuff your pipeline? How do you find new business?
Yeah, good question. We aren't very complicated. Neither is our strategy. Our mission is to help organizations, connect their audiences with buyers and have experiences in the process. And so we do a great job at this. And then, we show others how they can do it as well. So we do it with our clients. We build a fan base, for lack of a better term, of clients who are very pleased with the results. And then we show others how they can do it. There's a finite number of shows, and it's a very competitive space. And I believe the best strategy is to support the industry, innovate, and to be there. And we're very good at making sure that we get out and meet folks so they're aware of our business. And then when we have successes, we try to magnify those. And as we have the opportunity to get in front of potential clients, we help them see what we've done and how we can do it for them. And it's not a complicated space or sales process. It's really relationships. That's what our business is all about. And we focus on making sure that we're in the right place at the right time.
That's awesome. So have you had or used mentors in the past, or coaches?
Certainly not formally. I have had several people who, over the years, I guess if you look back in retrospect, have been mentors of types, but I've not had specific formal mentors. Just been surrounded by some great people who have taught me through examples and friendship. A couple that come to mind, Jim Bracken. I don't know if you know him. He was the CEO of VNU for a period of time. Jim is a gentle former Marine. I know that sounds odd, but and he has a unique ability to lead as a result of those experiences. He was a colonel and had a lot of experience leading in the military. Then he transitioned into the trade show world, originally with Bill Communications and then with VNU. And Jim took me in as a friend a long time ago, and not as a mentor, but as a friend. And in the process, he certainly did a lot of mentoring, and he's humble and curious, and I've learned a lot just from observing him over the years. And Jim's long retired now, but I still interact with him a lot and learn from him. Another is Larry Arnaday, who's a great friend and an early sales pioneer in the industry. Larry taught me a lot about relationships and their power. He's a brilliant guy who played a huge role in building one of the great companies in our industry. There are several others from the industry, but none per se mentors or coaches, but I've certainly learned a lot from being around the right people and having the chance to observe and interact with them.
Well, one of the reasons, Aaron, that I asked you to allow me to interview you, and besides the fact that I know you, I know that you're kind of a humble guy and wouldn't realize this, but I consider you an influencer in the industry. And did you ever realize that about yourself, that you may be an influencer, or if so, when, that you are able to direct the industry that you're integral to in any direction?
I'll let you know if I think I'm that one day, but I hope I don't. I hope I never come to think of myself that way, but I do want to be an influencer for the industry because I believe in it, but I don't have aspirations to be an influencer in the industry, if that makes sense.
Yes, I do.
And I've had the opportunity to be in some great leadership roles in the industry and work with most of the key people who lead organizations in the industry. I was a former chair of SEER, which is the Center for Exhibition Industry Research. I've been on the board of IAE. I was president of ESCA. I've been involved in a lot, and I think in each of those cases, there's an opportunity to promote the industry and improve it in some ways. That's been my goal. So I think like those before, some of those I mentioned, I hope to be useful to people along the way and make their experiences and careers better, but I'm not doing anything particularly special. And I certainly don't think I'm an influencer, but thank you.
Well, that's probably why you are an influencer, because you're not pompous about it. And I asked you when I first talked to you what your preferred social media platform was, and you mentioned LinkedIn. Is that where you put the majority of your influence?
Yeah, I think in a business context, it's certainly LinkedIn. I use other platforms, but my content and topics are all over the place there. LinkedIn is a business platform, and I keep it strictly business there. I'm grateful for all those I'm connected with and interact with there. I have a lot of great dialogue and exchange with people. It's a good place for me to talk about things that I think are important, whether that's directly related to Fern or general things happening in the industry, or sometimes just random business topics. Through the pandemic, I was able to talk with folks a lot on LinkedIn about kind of where we were at, where we were going. I think there's a lot of understandable stress and concern, and I had an opportunity to share some thoughts with people over LinkedIn mostly. I think or that I hope were helpful for folks as we went through the last year and a half.
Yeah, the last year and a half has been pretty devastating in our industry. And I know for me in my life, from the time I was 16 years old and started working, I have never had that much time off in my life.
I never wanted it, and I don't want it again. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So do you think, and I know that there are some thoughts that I want to cover before this, but while we're on COVID, do you think our industry is going to bounce back better, worse, as it was? What are your thoughts on that?
It's an interesting time, an interesting question. It's going to be an interesting couple of years ahead. It's not going to be a quick, speedy recovery for the most part, but I will say we've been pleased with the pace of recovery over the last couple of months. Most shows have exceeded our expectations as they've started to return. That said, I think there will still be a lot of bumps in the road, and I don't think we'll be back to 100% and growing past the 2019 baseline for some years to come. Of course, this varies a lot based on location, industry, type of event, et cetera, et cetera. Some will do better, and some will have slower recoveries. So I am cautiously optimistic at the moment, but there's a lot of headwinds ahead of us. I don't think we're going to have this extremely rapid recovery. It's going to take us a little bit of time, kind of maybe a Nike swoosh is what it's been compared to. I think that's going to be the case for most, but on average, we have seen stronger performance than expected. But you take a look at the variant right now, there's a little bit of another pause by some folks when it comes to getting ready to jump on airplanes, and we're going to see some of those headwinds. It's just we're in unknown territory. We have been for a long time, and I'm optimistic about the fundamentals. The industry is great. The industry will be, but we're gonna have some fits and starts as we get back to 100%.
Do you have any suggestions for? I mean, I particularly specialize in consumer shows, and I know that people that use Fern, I'm guessing that your percentage in that is probably higher in trade shows than in consumer shows. But in our industry, trade shows seem to be getting, because they're business to business, seem to be getting a little better response sooner than consumer shows. Do you have any suggestions or tips for either?
It's interesting. They both have advantages and disadvantages right now. Trade shows require a lot more travel. They usually require more spend. The attendees are more committed because they've had to travel and be there for multiple days, where a lot of consumer shows, it's a afternoon or a Saturday stop by, and there's a lot less commitment involved by the attendee to be there. That doesn't change the commitment required by the exhibitors. And we service both. We service a lot of public shows, and we service a lot of trade shows. You're correct. Our the largest portion of our business is trade shows, but we service hundreds of consumer shows around the country, and so we're in that space. I don't think there's a one answer fits all to your question, but I do think that organizers of shows and events should, trying to think how to say this right, not get too creative and let short-term circumstances throw off the strategy. And it's easy to do that right now. It's kind of like panic moves. And I think even after this long period of time where panic makes a lot of sense, it's important, I think, to kind of stay focused on why events work, and that's because of the communities, connections, and commerce they create, and people really need to stay focused on that, deliver in those areas, keep the focus on delivering in those areas, and the market will take care of itself. We can't solve the macro issues, and so we have to continue to focus on the areas that we can impact. And if we get hung up thinking that we're going to have some kind of cute or magical solution to the macro stuff, it's going to throw us off of our game when it comes to what our business is supposed to be like when it gets back. It's better to probably take a slow, steady approach at what's been successful over the long term than try and come up with some magic solution that's not going to solve anything, because what the problems are out of our control. So I don't really have any kind of broad or any specific advice, but I think at the macro level, it's say don't lose sight of the focus on what's worked in the past. That's what's going to work in the future, and it's going to take some time to get back to that, but don't get distracted.
I think that in my observation for consumer shows, our marketing plan has had to change because people's buying patterns have changed, and the way to communicate to them has changed. As you well are aware, you've been in this business long enough to see the difference in how we reach our audience. Are you seeing that same thing for you and for people in this business, that when I started, it was radio, print, television, and then we added billboards, and now it's none of the above? So I'm just trying to.
Yeah. Well, a couple comments on that. So there's change that should have happened over the last decade that we've had a lot of time to think about over the last year and a half, and so we can make those changes now. Those are different than changes that are reactions to the pandemic, and so I think it's important to separate those two. So you're correct. The world is different, and it's going to be different. A lot of that was on the trajectory anyway, and maybe some got accelerated as a result of the pandemic. For example, there's a large audience of people that use technology now better than they did prior to the pandemic, because they were locked in their houses, and people wanted to see their grandkids and interact with people that they couldn't in person. And so they learned a little more about technology. And so there's an opportunity to connect with those people. That was going to go that direction anyway, but it was accelerated. And so so please don't take my previous comment as saying that we shouldn't leverage the tools that we should have been using over the last decade, that now we have an opportunity to use better, because the audience and us understand them and know how to use them better. So that's an important differentiator between doing things specifically different that are going to be temporary as a result of the pandemic versus having learned ways to do better that were on the trajectory anyway and accelerating our plan to get there. Does that make sense?
Great point. Great point. How do you feel about hybrid shows?
I don't think there's much need for hybrid, to be honest. I mean, there's an aspect of, well, hybrid's a confusing term. So there's in-person and there's digital, that enhances in-person. So hybrid, I don't know exactly what hybrid is. Nobody can really define that. I'll tell you, virtual trade shows are something that won't exist. They've been a failure. Nobody has gained anything from those. If you try to get people into a second time of a virtual trade show, they pass almost immediately. However, that's different than having successful digital strategy related to the show, including a live portion of an in-person event that's digital, or a completely digital event. So education, some networking can be done effectively digital. Very little of what's most powerful about live events can be replicated in a digital environment. And that's especially true when it comes to the trade show portion, which is showing products, meeting with clients, letting people kick tires. Whether digital gets there someday through some of the AR and VR tools, and people can have that experience. I don't personally believe that's going to happen, but it's certainly not there today. And so when people really want to show a product and meet with prospects, they're not building the relationships, they're not testing the product, they're not getting a feel for what makes people buy and what connects people the same way. The social hours aren't happening. The meeting and having a spontaneous conversation that leads to dinner after and changes the dynamic of a business relationship just simply does not happen online. But for the last decade, this is another example where we should have, in many cases, been using technology to extend our communities beyond the 5 days that we meet in person, and have another 360 days of interaction, and ability to connect, and ability to know who's going to be there, and an ability to push out education content. Some groups have done great with that for a long time, most haven't. And that's where there's an opportunity, is to continue to push the community aspect and content out over the 360 non-live days for most organizations, where they have just a few days in person. So there is a big opportunity there. Some of that can be a sidecar to the live event, some of the general sessions, some of the education. Trying to do a full replacement electronically is just not feasible. And so I guess hybrid, to the extent that it's expanding the community, getting people a taste of what they're missing so that they come to the live event in the future, I think there's a big opportunity there. Hybrid as a substitute for some attendees isn't realistic.
I love that. That is really valuable information. And also for consumer shows, because we're kind of getting that push that we should be adding that. And I've been holding off, but interested. And so your point of view is really, really helpful. And it's helpful. I'm anxious for people in our industry to see this interview, because I really feel like, Aaron, that you've given out some valuable information that we've all needed to hear, and haven't had this opportunity to really hear from leaders in the industry like you. So I'm can't even tell you how much I appreciate your time. I wanted to ask you like one other big question, and that was, what's your lifetime goal or mission that you really want to achieve next?
Yeah, it's interesting. So this is probably a uninspirational answer when it comes to business. I don't have any lifetime goals when it comes to business. So I simply want to do a good job at supporting my team and customers, and know that something enduring comes from that. I don't have any big broad goals. I'm not trying to become something that we're not. I'm not trying to create a big gigantic organization beyond what comes naturally for us. But I do want to do a great job supporting my team and customers. And I believe that we've created an organization that was existing and enduring long before I got here, but I want to make sure that I'm a good caretaker and take that into the future. So all of my lifetime goals center around my family, really. I have, 5 great children. I want to help them reach their full potential and can be contributors to society, whatever that means for each of them. And if I can do things to help them, reach their potential, that's my mission. So it's not to be some business superstar. I'm very pleased with our organization. I'm going to keep pushing as hard as I can for us to help clients be successful, but I don't have lifetime goals that circle around business.
Well, you're awesome, Aaron. Thank you so much. Is there any question I haven't asked you that you kind of wanted to comment on, or any thoughts you'd like to share?
No, I don't think so. If I were to sum it up, I think I would just advise leaders to keep their reputations intact, not to lose sight of fundamentals, focus on teams and customers, be patient and flexible as circumstances develop. I mean, that's really what's going to help us get to the other side of this and be successful long term, is what's made us successful, in the past. It certainly takes patience. It certainly requires a lot of strategic thinking, but it's not different than what it's been. It's, keep the focus on teams, keep the focus on customers, be a good person, keep integrity intact. I think that when times are tough, there's little opportunities to cut corners that can be very expensive long term. Avoid those. Focus on keeping yourself in an area where you can be proud of what you've weathered, and if that means there are a few more setbacks or a little more time getting there, that's probably worth the trade.
Thank you so much, Aaron. You're awesome. Thank you for your service to the community.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.